agenda. Hearing none. Is there anybody, member of the public, that would like to address council on any topic that you will not be discussing on the agenda later? Okay. Move right into reports. I guess I will report just briefly. I will give credit where credit is due. Gary Torres and Amber Johnson were working really hard to get us represented in the local leaders meeting with the Secretary of the Interior. And I don't know that a lot of people knew they were working on that before we started hounding and struggling and trying to find a slot. They were on that, and anyway, they deserve some credit for doing that. It's pretty frustrating, you know, the whole process and everything that happened there. But I was able to get in the room, and we'll talk about the letter that I wrote later. And everybody had between 2 and 3 minutes for 20 people going around the table. So there wasn't a lot of time to express concerns. The one that I expressed not contained in my letter was water rights. The original monument encompassed our entire watershed on the mountain. And that's a real concern if you don't know how that might be affected, because you've got to be able to continue to use that and develop it and maintain it and expand it. And that has got to be held. And Bruce Adams made a real point on that as well. And I was also really thrilled. The community needs to know that when I came out of the meeting, the entire council was there, just being there, just being a presence, and trying to have some influence and talk to people who might be involved in some of these decisions. And so there's some good representatives for the community here, and I appreciate them too. So that's my report. Anything from other members of council? Moving ahead then, administration, anything particular, Dave?
Yeah, so next week is the League of Cities and Towns Conference, as well as the City Managers Conference back to back. So I'll be gone basically Saturday or Sunday to Sunday. But I think I've only heard from a few of you that are going in person. So if you are going in person, after the meeting, we'll have you fill out a per diem form for food and things like that while you're at the conference. If you're still planning on attending virtually or in person, please let me know so we can make sure we're aware of that. So, I think that was about it.
Okay, let's move into staff reports, please. Chief Bradford.
Got the report and had a chance to read it. Are there any questions about it?
Well,
I saw it. Oh, here it is.
where is it? Oh,
I knew I'd
Okay.
seen it online, but
it wasn't in the order I was shooting for. You got it. I will mention that the chief sent me a link to some information that the police department has been working on, studying on the suicide response, which has been a real concern that we've had for quite some time. And we mentioned that to our elected representatives regularly to see what resources might be out there that could expand what we're able to do. But the police department is sometimes taking a frontline issue on some of those situations. And I looked over some of that training, and you got to really be thinking. And these guys are training well in order to be able to handle those situations.
If I can add to that, Mayor, and
Sure.
Chief and I have spoken about some of the incidents, and obviously we won't go into any detail outside of Chief and I speaking. Our officers and our chief have seen some pretty heartbreaking situations and really helped in some heartbreaking situations. So please just, if you see them, take the time to thank them, see how they're doing. It's not an easy job. So I really appreciate what they're doing. So
Anything else you want to highlight of what you got going, Chief?
Not really, I mean, other than just what's on the report about the stats is we're trying to be a little, not say hard nosed on dog numbers, but we're catching dogs. We're writing a lot more citations, and it seems to be slowing down the number of dogs that are running loose. And then we're taking a little more aggressive action towards all the ATVs and 4-wheelers, motorcycles being hot rodded around town by the kids that don't have driver's licenses and proper registrations and things that way. So we kind of avoid getting somebody hurt and possible lawsuits and things along those lines.
So I gather that some of that is driven by genuine misunderstanding of the ATV ordinance, and some of it's maybe driven by a not so genuine misunderstanding of the ATV ordinance.
Some kids have been stopped a couple of times and they have been educated as far as the ordinance, and we've had to stop them again. And so their next step is, mom and dad have to come pick it up, and there's a whole slew of citations that can be issued. We don't want to start issuing citations. We'd rather just have people do as they're supposed to and not have kids flying around town, all those things causing crashes. Because we have had a few kids that are on ATVs that shouldn't be crashing into cars and wrecking on city streets, because their 4-wheelers aren't designed to be driven on the streets because of the low pressure tires, and they have a lot more traction, and you make a hard turn and they will roll over occasion. So
we can, I can work with Pratt, and maybe we can do a little public education through our social media to clarify that ordinance, especially with summer coming around.
we've done some of that. We've had it on the police Facebook page, and I think Pratt's posted it, of course.
Yeah, okay.
But I've also seen spring breakers, like kids that I don't recognize
Yes.
on, like in a side by side, like little kid driving it around, like,
Right.
and I would think that if it's not legal in the town they live in, like that it's not legal here either, that they would know that.
Yeah, it is
Their
not
parents
legal
would know that, but
You're supposed to have a driver's license, and
But maybe that's something us as staff we can brainstorm. Maybe there's some other things we can do.
Sounds
Fun.
good.
yep.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
Sorry, I'm just gonna ask a
go
question.
ahead.
So we issued a lot of citations, which you mentioned that traffic is up,
Yes.
especially a lot from last year, which was right in the middle of COVID.
Mhm.
Is it up from previous years? Do you know?
Citations?
Yeah, I guess you probably didn't go back and look. I just would be interested to know if that's a standard year or if visitation could be up that much, because I feel like it's significantly up, and so.
Give me a few minutes, I can go back on the things and find that information. Report.
it wouldn't directly correlate though, because we're finally fully staffed,
Yeah,
and
that's
for
true.
several years, we
Changes
haven't
some.
had enough.
Yeah, we've been
So in 2019, you may have been short.
We were short in 2019 because that's
Okay.
when Chief Torgerson left to become sheriff. We were short pretty much all that year, and
That's right.
so.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you.
Parks and Rec, David Comer.
Hello, Mayor and Council. You have any questions on the?
We find it.
We're trying to make our
Page 8.
presentations
Yeah.
brief if you've read the report. So
Summary on the
I
front.
appreciate what you've done with the schools, giving them a time for the pool. That's probably gonna be a lot less of a headache for you.
In the past, we had about every teacher,
No, I thought
every
that was a smart
class
move.
wanting to schedule, so I just went to the principal.
And the school's appreciative of that too.
And the kids are appreciative of that.
Yeah, that they
And
get
the
to go.
parents are appreciative of that.
That's actually what we're working on. We're actually hooked up the pumps to take all the old water out of the pool over winter so that we can start cleaning it, getting it ready. So we get lots of people coming through the parking lot when they see us out there working on the pool, so they can waiting to see water. So,
I did use the new registration system for softball and baseball.
how do you like it?
It was different than, I mean, it's definitely more complex, and I think you may have to walk some people through it. I'm pretty good with computers, and it took me a few extra steps, but I think once I created the account, it made it easy. So just so you know, it's definitely a little harder, but I see now that my kids are in there, and if I need to register them next year, they'll still be in there, and I liked that part of it for sure.
It's super easier the next time. The first time it is, we tried to talk with the people who do the software, because that's right into our software that we use for everything.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how it makes perfect sense to them, but they're not the ones using it. And so we've been making suggestions as to, hey, this would be a lot more streamlined and better, but they haven't been encouraged enough to make the changes yet. So
Like just creating an account to start with, I think, yeah, I tried to just register, and then I got all confused about where I was, and it was taking me to a different page out of the city page on one link, on the create account link. And so, but once I got past that, I could see that the system was really good. I liked that the sport was already in there, the grades were already in there. You know, the price, I got to put them both in at once and pay at one time. There was a lot of good things about it too. I just, so you know, it was a little complicated for me.
it is, I feel the same way.
Were there accounts that transferred over? Like, cause all of my stuff was in there and I've never done that before.
So if you have signed your kid up for anything before,
Okay.
you should be in the system. And
Okay.
so, but if they haven't played a sport, it's those first year kids that
Gotcha.
haven't registered before. That would be a little more difficult than what you had
Well,
to do.
it wasn't my first time signing up, but I don't think I created an account in the past, so nothing was saved. I think I just did it as a guest or something, because
Okay.
anyway, I think that's
It
what I
was
did.
different, but yeah.
That's not the only way to sign up, is it?
No, they can still do it in person with the old fashioned paper, fill it out right there at the front desk, but
But it requires staff time to input all that into the system, so.
You might consider making a tutorial video.
Yeah, that's-
that, or
Yeah.
we really would like to push some change. The nice thing about the Sportsman software that you guys got for us in a year and a half now, or so, 2 years.
Almost 3.
That's one of those things that we've just now implemented, and they've changed a lot of things for us to streamline it to the way we want it. This just isn't one that we've,
Fully utilized yet.
yeah.
I might mention that one benefit of this software is now when you register online, those funds are actually coming into our express bill pay and then coming right into our account. So we're not
Oh,
handling
nice.
any of those dollars or having to use a third party. It's all coming through because Sportsman does work real well with Express. And so that's reduced some of that.
We use the same system in my prior city.
So
There is more work on the front end, but as soon as it's set up, it's a lot easier on the back end
But
too.
it could make it a little easier point and click to, makes
Yeah.
more sense, I think. I agree
Yeah.
100%. So.
Did you do something different with the annuals? It seemed like that was maybe an easier process, renewing the annual memberships.
So all
It
annual
seemed
memberships
easier than,
automatically renew.
yeah.
Unless they put in $4 up front, but if they're being billed monthly,
That's
it's
how I'm
an
doing it.
automatic renewal. So on that last month, if people do want to cancel, they would have to just let us know that last
So I
month.
went down there to read, and they said, no, it's just automatic now.
Yeah, we don't let you get out of your
No,
contract.
I'm
ever.
stuck. But it seemed like it was an easier thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that Sportsman helps with that too.
Well, I'm curious about the annuals. I don't recall how we compared to in 2020 to 2019, and how, if we're trending up or down, or if it's coming back and forth. Do you remember back to 19 and 18 and see?
So I just did an analysis for our equipment, when we got new equipment and how it affected our members, and it shot up by over 800 annual members, which is huge for a town our size to increase by that many. But we didn't do it over the full 4 years because of 2020 and COVID. We kind of didn't even want to count that because a lot of people canceled memberships and different things like this. And when we closed our doors, we were a little bit more flexible with some of their memberships and allowing people to cancel because of everything.
Right.
So
Trying to be helpful as we could, but
that analysis is pretty good. I asked him to do that in relation to the budget because we've got to renew our equipment contract, which is actually increasing a bit since when we prior did it. So I said, well, let's look at the increase in the pricing for the equipment and what has been the increase in our membership since we got that equipment. And our memberships have actually increased by 75% since we got that equipment, which helped me feel like it was a good justification for some of the upgrades that we want to spend in the equipment. It
just
shows.
a super brief note on that before I sit down. Some of the equipment, the lease that we had was only for our, like the treadmills and that type of
The
thing.
aerobic
It was the
So the
aerobic
cardio.
type stuff.
Yeah.
So all of the weight training things and things that are along the outside wall that have never been replaced. And it's been over 10 years now. And so we're making that proposal to, instead of just renewing the lease on just the treadmills and those things, adding those other equipment to that lease so that we can stay ahead of the game and stay fresh with new equipment every 4 years. And
You'll be able to see that in the budget.
yeah, when he brings it up, but yeah, we're super excited to do that. A lot of our members are too, that they've heard some murmurings.
And I will say that that's what members are pushing for, is better weight equipment.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's weight equipment for the barbell class that people will take out of the barbell room and take into that other room. And that's not what we want to see happen. We want there to be good enough stuff.
That's when you get holes in walls and scuffed doors and things like that, so, yeah.
Maintenance repairs. So.
Awesome.
Anything?
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for Dave? Thank you. Finance report, Kim Palmer.
This is the invoice register. Comes through every council meeting. Do you have any questions for me on that? Any information?
Nope, we're
I don't
good.
hear any.
Thanks.
Awesome.
It's pretty quiet, so we'll keep going.
I like.
Okay, Public Works. Well, that's a way more cool title than
Sorry,
the
can I-
project status.
Can I just say something real quick on, so I remember now, there's the Smash Athletic unit. One thing I look for is, are we buying locally? When I look at these registers, the Smash Athletic uniforms, is it possible? That doesn't, I don't think that's local. Is it possible to do some of those locally?
Is that from?
Or is it-
Is that the volleyball stuff?
Yeah, we,
Yeah, that was-
on these particular ones, we do a lot of our uniforms locally, actually.
Okay.
On this one, we asked for a bid because there was such a drastic difference. We couldn't go local because.
Well, that seems
it's
really
almost
cheap.
double, Almost double.
That's a really,
Good deal.
gotcha. Okay, thank
Karen,
you.
do you need me to pull anything up?
Okay, Terry.
Right, Mayor, Council, just a couple items. I've got the monthly water report for March 2021. Items of note, we pumped 102 acre feet from recapture up to the third reservoir to help make sure that we have enough water for parks, cemetery, churches, just all the services that come out of that system. Update on precipitation. Those last couple storms in March helped a bunch, but
I'm not buying that 11-inch report off of Camp Jackson.
well, there's only 3 there today, so either way. Yeah,
Really?
the water's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of cold this week, next week, so the soil moisture is at an all-time low this year. We're not getting hardly any runoff at all. I mean, nothing will go past the city's diversion down Johnson Creek would be my prediction. I mean, it hasn't yet. And the snow's almost gone, right at the snow tail at Camp Jackson. So very little coming into dry wash. And nothing new going into recapture. Recapture got a little bit earlier on when that low elevation snow melted, but
Yeah, I mean, it's.
there's nothing. I was bear hunting up in recapture Saturday, and there's nothing coming down the creek to even go into Guyman's diversion up on that. So not looking good for runoff So we'll have to keep preaching conservation and hope for some May and June precipitation, which is
It's what we'll
pretty,
need. The longer it stays cool, the more we lose just to evaporation and soak in, and
yeah.
So
we need
Terry,
to get real hot real fast if we're gonna get anything.
are we still feeling comfortable in the rates that we were recommending?
Yeah, I mean, we ran the model, and so I think we'll be pretty close to that predicted runoff. We may be a little bit lower than the 900, but with the 100 that we were able to move from recapture, that helps. So,
The ditch company will be making their determination on the 15th, is that right?
no, tomorrow,
Tomorrow,
14th.
14th.
8 PM, we have a meeting with the irrigation board tomorrow night, and they should set their allocation, and I would guess it's gonna be around 2.5 acre feet per thousand, so they'll just deplete what's left out in recapture and probably do that pretty quickly. So that's my water report, unless there's questions. I have 2 other items. I put the little staff report together on the Westwater Power Project. We received, besides what I put in that, we received a signed letter of intent. NTUA has, their general managers executed that now, and so it's in the mayor's box. We're kind of waiting. I just want to make sure Kendall was good with that before the mayor signs it. And then we have, in the packet, there's the draft construction agreement. That's already been changed a little bit. And we had some feedback from Kendall. We thought maybe we'd run into a problem. NTUA they expressed interest in having a sovereign immunity clause in the agreement. And I felt like we'd probably have a problem with that. I asked Kendall, and he said, yeah, we'll have a problem with that. And I expressed my concern to UAMPS, and one of their engineers at NTUA has indicated that they're going to go through a process to get a waiver, so they won't have to have that language. And that's a 30-day process, so it's going to slow us down a little bit, but that's a lot better than a deal killer. So,
Well, because otherwise we could get left with a big chunk of a project that we've done and paid for, and it doesn't finish out, right?
and it's not
like-
reservation land, and our agreement is with a tribe, with a utility company, not with the actual tribe. And so
So that makes it different anyway.
I think they were pretty confident they could get that waiver, so they
Okay.
should be good. As far as I know, just the little bit I've heard, NTUA is working with Utah Navajo Trust Fund to get that 200,000 that they have allocated for the project. So the financing part of this thing should be a slam dunk. And so as soon as we can get the construction agreement executed, we should be able to, as a city, get ICPE going on the design. And then it makes sense to use them as a consultant because they already have access to all of our system modeling. And so there'd be a pretty big cost and a big time delay in trying to select a different engineer too. So I'd recommend that we just move forward with ICPE, and then we'll have a formal bidding process like we would with any construction project. And so we have that 8 to 10 month schedule, and of course, that's not going to start until we can get the construction agreement signed. Are there any questions on that?
So it says that they're not approving the agreement on April 21st.
No, so they will. So at UAMPS, what will happen, part of the process for NTUA to secure the energy that will come through our system, they have to become a member of UAMPS. So that's on schedule. NTUA still plans to approve the draft construction agreement, I guess. I'm not 100% certain how they function, but we should have that preliminary approval from the NTUA board next Friday. And then 2 Fridays, 2 weeks from, a week from this Friday, they should meet. And then our following council meeting, we should be able to approve that agreement. Hopefully the construction agreement will have that. And but that may not happen with the waiver that we need on the sovereign immunity language. So we'll just have to see.
So that's the draft in your packet, but then today, I'm sorry, I didn't hear if you had mentioned the letter that we got. Was that today that we got?
Yeah, the letter of intent. And so the mayor should be able to sign that. And that's a non-binding agreement. So that's not one we'll bring to council, I
So
don't think.
has Have we heard back from Kendall on that since
No.
whatever version of it I have here? Haven't heard.
No, I just sent that today, so
So
typically,
we need to
once the
wait for
day's
that.
going, he's usually pretty busy and
Yeah, just let
probably hear
me
from him
know when
tomorrow.
he's
He
reviewed it.
usually sets aside Wednesdays.
Okay.
Focuses on cities.
Is NPUA, I don't know how they compare in scale to some larger municipal power systems and stuff. They're pretty big.
They're pretty big.
They're big, and they wonder if they took an interest in the carbon-free power project, if they could make a difference in that. Are they at that scale, or are they a player, or they're?
They certainly could be a player.
Mhm.
So I believe that they've been approached about that.
Mhm.
I can follow up.
Even external to UM. So I wonder if that would kind of help time in with it. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're a big operator for
so I
sure.
think the way they'll do that energy is they'll actually use some of the Colorado River Storage Project from Glen Canyon Dam. That's some of the power that will come through our system. And I think what we're looking at, we've talked about wheeling a whole bunch, and we're really not going to have a wheeling. We're not going to charge NTUA for wheeling. I think we found just a simpler way to work that exchange of the power through ours. What will happen is we'll program this meter. So we have about 5% loss on our system. Some of that's street lights, the four-way stop over here. You got flashing lights. We have street lights all over town. We don't meter those. And then there's just some line loss. And so we'll do a little bit of engineering and calculate what the losses will be. And they'll pay some, 1-2% more than the power that actually goes to the meter. And that'll just be programmed in. And so that's how we'll recoup any costs that we have, because we're really not going to maintain a lot of line for them. And in reality, anything that's along Center Street that could be annexed in the future with future customers on it, that would be a line that benefits the city in other ways too.
So the plan is still to create a master meter that the city of Blanding will charge to NTUA.
Actually, UAMPS will. So
So the city of
we
Blanding
will.
is not going to be involved?
We will, but NTUA or UAMPS will have a meter out there just like they have a meter here.
Okay.
And so they will actually, NTUA will pay their power bill to UAMPS, and UAMPS will reimburse us for that. Well, and there's not even a lot of reimbursement because NTUA will supply their own energy through and so that just gets transferred, and that's part of all those power service
So they're
agreements.
buying their energy out there in the market, and we're the conduit, and
We're basically a pass-through, and
Right.
this kind of makes us not have to be a middleman.
And we'll have those agreements, and those will come to council when we get there. That part of it, so this part of it is just the construction to get power and the primary meter sitting over there so that they can connect to it. And then the transfer of the energy through our system will come in subsequent agreements.
well, see, now that this has finally it's tried to come to a head 3-4 times that I'm aware of, and now we're finally there, and as it's evolved, I think we've hit a way better solution than anything that's ever been talked about before.
Yeah.
This looks so much cleaner. I like it.
Hopefully, we can move the construction process and the design and stay a little bit ahead of schedule. And I keep hoping we could get power out there before the end of the calendar year. I don't know that that's totally realistic, but it's not impossible either. So
I guess I want to get power out there, and we've, I think we're hopefully doing our part to help with that, but I guess then I don't see, are they going to be using so much power that I thought they were going to be a customer to the city of Blanding on our power system.
No.
So the benefit to the city, and the city's not paying any of these costs
right,
other than your time.
other than my time.
The benefit to the city is though that we will have a line run down our Center Street.
Mhm.
So that's a benefit.
Yes.
Do we not want to sell them power, I guess? Or is there just going to be too much usage that we can't handle that?
No, there's not gonna be too much usage. It complicates things. When we want to mark it up, they're already a utility company. They already own energy resources. This is fairly common. I mean, before we bought all that upper Blue Mountain Road infrastructure, Rocky Mountain Power used to bring power through our system and then serve, Shane Shumway, Lloyd, Shumway, that whole north area of there across Pinion Ridge Road. So this happens quite frequently. that It'll do it. And I mean, we could try and do that, but there's probably not a need. I mean, we'll be left whole, so there won't be a cost to the city to do this. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
And they'll be able to get their power at probably a lower price than just buying it at a
Yeah, they'll do it a
Commercial
lot. It'll be really similar to how we get our power.
Yeah.
They'll own a resource and
I like that too.
they'll
but
allocate a certain amount, and if they use more, then they'll have to buy more power through the pool at UAMPS, and if they use less, that can be sold back to the pool.
Yeah,
So then it's between.
it's just a
them and
little
you.
different than what I was thinking and
Yeah,
how that
it
was gonna
keeps
play out.
evolving
Yeah.
a little bit, and we're finding ways to make it less complicated, and so that it's easier to fast track it, I guess, because there's just not a lot of places to get hung up on. You know, if we were trying to make a 5% markup or something on everything, that would probably slow NTUA down a little bit.
Yeah,
Any other questions?
thank you.
Just an update on UDOT. Dave and JJ and I met with UDOT on Monday morning and looked at the four-way intersection up here and then our school crossing. And so it's kind of three projects in one. To all of us, it'll feel like one project, or it should feel like one project. What will happen is hopefully before school starts, we will have some big arms that go out over the road down here at 3rd South, and we will have that reduced speed signage that'll be overhead.
So we are gonna get the overhead arms.
Yes.
How did you wrangle that?
I did.
Robert, right?
Yeah, Robert Dow.
Robert really came.
Yay.
for us.
He's still pushing
Yeah.
for it, and so that's gonna happen. Up here at the four-way, basically everything that's there now will go away with the exception of the stop signs on the right side of the road. And then everything will go up for a traffic signal except for the actual signal heads, the red, yellow, and green. Since we don't warrant a signal yet, we'll get the 4 big arms across the street. We'll have signage, big signage that basically, if you're coming southbound on 191, it'll be turn left, people.
Which we need.
Don't head to Pratt's house, which we need.
Get excited about
But
it.
will there still be a warning, like a block out?
There will.
Yeah.
So there will also be some big overhead
Yay.
arms, one about the south property line of the flower shop, and then one over, somewhere in front of truck
And
stop.
some signage, directional
That will-
signage for
So that'll give
edge of the cedars.
them a heads up. And then the only other wayfinding will be edge of the cedars.
The benefit of this is, it's going to have the big mast arms with just like the blinking red light like we've got now. But it's a nice first step, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, to actually getting the actual traffic light.
I say kudos, because I thought we had been forgotten on that. So.
Yeah, I wonder how many.
Well, we got forgotten.
Well,
for a year.
the way Robert with UDOT said, he said, this is how he explained it to me. I can't remember if it was both projects or just one of them, but I think it was the crossing. He said that he was approached and said, we want to do this. And he said, we didn't even ask questions. We said, yes, we'll do it. So it was a benefit to us.
We'll have a signal cabinet, and that'll probably go in the lawn right there at Canyon.
I know, right?
Um,
I'll take it.
So everything that happens at the four-way could be held up a little bit if there is a right-of-way issue. I don't believe there'll be a right-of-way issue because we have, between the city and UDOT, we should have 20 feet behind the curb all the way around. We should be pretty good to go that way. We'll have some things to work out with power. We kind of feed street lights off of all the crazy stuff with that light hanging in the middle. And so, we have a few tweaks there.
And they're gonna improve some of the curb and gutter that's on the intersection too, so a lot of
that's
that's
broken up and,
What's the timetable on it all?
before school.
before school.
That's
It's quite possible. They think they can have it constructed.
And they're gonna
Wait
replace,
for the complaints.
yeah, they're gonna replace some of the signage down here too, and there's a lot.
That's really good news.
Yeah, the signs will move a little bit. Right now, the school zone signs are really close to where we have power conveniently, and they're not worried about that. They're worried about getting the signs in the exact spot that they need to be based on federal code. And so, you'll probably see a little bit of boring and stuff going on in front of your business, Mayor, and then in front of the South Chapel, there'll be some stuff to get power moved around. Right now, our crossing guard has to go to both signs, the north one and the south one, and turn them on. That'll no longer be the case. We'll just have one switch from one location that'll turn.
Sometimes they just call whoever's in my office and they have them go out there and turn it on. There's nobody there anymore, so.
Well, yeah,
That's
that doesn't work
good.
so good. We'll put the switch on, actually on the southbound approach, just because they park there and then they can walk.
Where's the edge of the Cedar sign? It's gonna be on center, or is it gonna be on 600 West too?
I
or-
think it's the signage that's gonna be leading up to the intersection, right?
I'm not 100% certain.
Because we had that one signage there on our street, 600 West, that's just totally out of date. It has the wrong
No, what
hours
they're
and
talking
things.
about is more wayfinding. So right now there's one kind of by Zion's saying to turn and people
Right.
miss it because it's,
Yeah, one up
Street.
by my street is actually the Cedar sign, then,
Yes.
right?
So I would anticipate over here by the flower shop that there would be a brown edge of the cedar sign over the road along with the 191 signs that says turn left.
Yeah.
And and 191, of course, will say turn right. And then coming southbound, you'll have one that says go straight for edge of the cedars, go left for 191, go left. I would think you'd see Bluff on there, but possibly it could be White Mesa. I mean, UDOT will make that decision.
That's great.
Maybe they'll say Arizona, I don't know. They'll.
And then they'll think, well, I thought we were in Arizona.
So, yeah, exciting news.
Good news.
Yeah, that is good
Hey,
news. Good job.
Excellent.
thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Okay, Pratt Economic Development and Visitor Services.
All right. Well, on page 37, if anyone's looking, it's clear down there. Does anyone have any questions or concerns that we want to talk about that was on that report?
You put some history in there, right? Like Robert, I had some complaints regarding that too.
And Pratt's gonna meet with the San Juan Historical Preservation Society on the 20th to kind of fill them in on what's going on too. Yeah, I had three comments or complaints
I
come my
had
direction.
3 or 4 too.
One of the things that we really would love to do is to make the upstairs loft all historical things and more focused, but we've had to work through some ADA, so we had to get a structural engineer to tell us the feasibility. Now we're working with the regional ADA center out of like Colorado or somewhere out of state, just to say, what can we do, since the cost is exponential. You'd have to cut into the roof to do things like that. And so I think one of the options that we're able to do is, if we have historical things up there, we could just have a TV downstairs that shows what the displays are up there. I'm hoping that should accommodate it from some of the conversations that I've had. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool things. And we'll have historical things downstairs too, as well as the tourist information and other things that you see in the reports. So.
I just think that museum has grown too much because there wasn't a direction for it. And there's a huge liability there because we can't properly preserve and protect people's private artifacts. And if they're stolen or destroyed, those things are priceless to the owners. And so how do you put a dollar value on something that's irreplaceable?
And there was so much in there, it was hard to know if something went. I mean, I'm sure some of the staff would know if something went missing, but
Right.
that's the one thing that we talked about, is we needed to have a balance. It's a visitor center, so it should have a balance of these different legs that are highlighted in there. And, years ago, I wrote grants for Thanksgiving Point and all of their museums. And then, like, we have our Veterans Memorial outsides, and I've done Veterans Memorial for 2 cities. And the idea was, let's balance it and let's simplify it and make it so it's easy to digest for our
Yes.
visitors and really tells our story.
And I also appreciate that you're trying to be ADA compliant, because what we have now is not ADA compliant.
Correct.
And so there's a huge percentage of our visitors that cannot properly access
Mhm.
any of what we're
Yeah,
providing them.
Yeah, and the truth is, it's not a museum, it's a visitor center. And so we need to present it as a visitor center, which tells history and those sorts of things too, so.
Yeah, and I mean, is anyone asked, they're welcome, complaints, you can send them my way. We're happy to explain, you can send them, this paper.
Well, I think what
copy,
you're doing the 20th is gonna go a long ways.
Yeah, I think
The
so.
concerns that you heard were about
That
moving
we had
the,
been given orders to go in there and destroy and throw away
oh
the
goodness.
things in the visitor center.
There was some
Wow.
miscommunication going on, so we cleared that up.
And
so.
you used the word.
And I said, I never voted for that.
Yeah.
You used the word
More than
artifact, you
discussed
know.
it.
And I never ordered that, just so it's
Okay,
clear.
I got it.
But there are some hot
So their
people.
concern is removing the historical
Yeah,
items.
you know, everything's downstairs preserved in a room, you know, but that goes back to that same thing of, as we started moving things, people were showing up, you know, well, that was my grandpa's, and well, that is your grandpa's, but my paperwork here says that your Aunt Bonnie is who gets it. Well, no, she doesn't want it. You know, so
Yeah.
there are artifacts, there are things that people really value, and that's where that concern came in is, you know, we do have a lot, we feel like we need a better balance, and I
So
think the direction we have, and by, you know, August, we're gonna have a really good layout, balanced
Yeah.
visitor center that benefits travelers, the community, and people just looking to learn, you know, it'll be a well-balanced building.
And so Pratt did an excellent job, because that was one of my big concerns before he did anything, is let's make sure we talk to staff, and let's make sure that we properly know what was deeded to the city and what was lent to the city. Let's make sure we're communicating with all those individuals. He went above and beyond to do that. The only other part, if you want to just maybe talk about the RFP.
So have some of the things been returned to families then?
Yeah, probably like 50% of it, and the other 50% still down in the basement. Most of the things that were in the nice glass displays, we've kept those because they're easy to
And we
interchange.
own some of those things, didn't we? Whatever been.
Yeah. And so many things that we own, we have, but a lot of the things that were nicer are in those displays still, so they're protected
Okay.
as well. But those will be easy to, you know, interchange. If you want to take 4 or 5 things upstairs, then bring those down and do 4 or 5 things differently every year. We kept those type of.
And I invite you, if you
items.
haven't, go have a look, you'll see the difference, but we're still doing displays and signages.
Yeah.
That's on order, and that's what he means. So sometime throughout the summer, you'll see little additions and improvements even still, but
And then for the request for proposal that we put out there was for a guide and outfitting operation. If you're familiar with the building, just across from the gift shop and kind of where the cash registers are, there's that room that had the computers and the printer and those areas. That room right now, we're kind of choosing for storage. We thought the better use for it would be a guide and outfitter operation in there. So we put out a request for proposal to see if any guides and operators would be interested in renting out that space from us for some form of that. And in that proposal, we have a couple different options, you know, if they want to pay rent monthly, if they want to give us a portion of sales, things like that, but some way to supplement income there. We're giving them the space, the Wi-Fi, storage, the ability to run a business out of there. They would then in turn be able to give tourists and guests or locals, you know, a guided tour or whatever their specialty is from there, you know, each day, book things and head out. So we think that'll be a good option. That closes in 10 days. So we're still receiving those proposals. Then I believe the game plan is once we got those, then the council would be involved in kind of finalizing the contract and putting in stipulations and things like that and working as a whole to get what we want.
Have you had any interest?
We've had one so far, so.
And if for some reason we get proposals and we don't like them all, or the one that we've gotten we don't like, or whatever, we don't have to. I mean, we can just say, you know, we've decided to close this or go back out for more proposals or
I
something.
don't know that we want to say don't like, we want to say isn't mutually beneficial.
Right, yeah, thank you. That's a much more professional way to say it. But yeah, but if it doesn't meet the needs of what the city's looking for,
Yeah.
my hope is that we'll have someone there with part-time hours where we'll get a portion of whatever revenues. And that's what we're looking for in the proposals, of what are they going to propose? Because, you know, my family, for example, we travel and camp probably at least a month or more every year just during the summer. And we always stop at the visitor centers trying to find more information. And if there was a service right there that said, you know, hey, for X number of dollars, we do a guided raft tour here and stuff. I mean, we just figured you guys were talking about, let's find other ways to bring in some revenue. So we thought, let's use that space and see what we can do with it. And if it flops, it flops, you know, if it works, it works. So we'll see.
Anything else I can address?
It's an interesting idea.
Anyone? Okay.
Thank you.
So when do you have to put out an RFP for, it's an interesting idea. I have to be honest, I wish that that would have been addressed with council because this has been such an issue for the last 2 years, this visitor center has. And we asked you to come to us with ideas. But I think it's a great idea. I like it. And I appreciate you moving forward with it. Are we going to put out an RFP also for,
When their contract, CNHA.
because I don't want that to
No, that
come up
one-
again and miss that contract.
That one we'll be really involved with. I don't know.
But
if
that's
it's
the plan
we're
tentatively.
following code with the RFP. I don't know if in that code it spelled out it had to come to you or not, so my apologies for that.
Well,
This one's not, I mean, to that degree, my thinking was we're getting the proposals and then you guys would finalize exactly what you want in it. So all we're leaving you out on is the one-page paper I put on a website. You'll still be able to go over terms and
I don't think
everything.
we have to be involved in getting RFPs. I think it's what the plan was for the visitor center. We had asked for
Yeah.
that as a council and it never really came back to council and we've
Okay.
been waiting. So that
We
was the one
apologize
thing.
for that. You know, when I first got here, kind of what Pratt and I heard and maybe we didn't hear and maybe we didn't understand that fully, but we heard, we just want to see something done. So we said, we only have so much time before the season opens. Let's try.
And
get
what we
something
wanted to
done.
see done is an RFP for CNHA.
And so
You will see
Yeah,
that.
and you
That
will
one
see
you will see
that
because it'll be very
because
slow.
at that time, we had, the contract was already up for renewal. We had to get that placed and stuff. So, but yes, when the next, we're going to do a little more prep because we want that. That's more involved than the RFP for the outfitter thing. We want to make sure we get that RFP.
So remind us
really
when
well.
that's due again.
I would like to have that out by June.
Okay.
I was
So-
thinking it was coming up. It should be
So,
coming up
yeah,
soon.
throughout May, I'll get it written. We can,
Yeah.
we'll,
In February, you signed the 1 year.
But it was backdated to October, wasn't
We're
it?
talking CNHA.
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
just want to make sure.
yeah, no,
we'll.
my thought was if I had it ready by June, we get it on councils and then by August it's done. You can send it out and then if it's October, whenever, it gives us, we aren't throwing it on you last minute and saying, hey, you got 2 weeks to decide. You have more like 2.5 months. So that one we'll have ready to go.
And we'll probably review it as staff, you know, depending on how many proposals we get. So if we got, 20 proposals, we would probably try to narrow it down to bring a few to you. But I mean, I assume we'll probably get just a handful that we bring them all to council. to look
I'm
at.
glad to see that you guys are moving in that direction. I guess I'm kind of with you, Cheryl. I would just like to have known when you guys pulled the trigger.
Sorry, we pretty much pulled
Only
it that
because
next
it's been
day.
such a big issue. Yeah.
We literally, after that next day from that council meeting, Pratt and I sat down and we just started. We just
Literally started drawing.
So
Well, like
maybe that's my overzealousness of just jumping in the
Like I
job,
told
but
you though, when you first came, that was my biggest
Yeah.
thing. And I'm glad that we're seeing some movement on that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we'll look at it, you can see the potential and see where we can fit, different displays in and how that would kind of all work to give it a full balance.
Well, I think the
building, so.
floor plan that you have there and the concept that, I think that idea was pretty much fleshed out, that we're getting what we were
Yeah.
looking for.
So what we'll do is we can, we don't have quite all the signage and stuff ready, but what we can do, maybe not next council meeting, but one of these upcoming council meetings, we can give you just, here's the rendering of some of the signage that we're doing, where we're going to place it, the layout. If you go and look, you can kind of visualize where we would place it and things like that. So we're trying to keep it, one of the keys of these types of things is keeping it very simple and concise. Big imagery is helpful because that's what draws people in with a little bit of information and stuff. So.
Okay, I just have another idea. Sorry to make it
Yeah,
hard.
I've got my pen.
But could we not duplicate some of those efforts at the airport?
You mean?
Yeah.
Because we have that building
Okay.
that the FBO is running that's ugly and empty.
Oh, you mean, let's just kind of
Bringing
pretty it
some
up a
imagery
little bit.
and doing that, yeah.
Because if
It
you're
hasn't
already,
been-
if we're already putting some money into some of this
Beautiful.
information, like, couldn't we just duplicate it and put some?
Almost like a substation visitor
Uh-huh.
center or something.
Good idea.
That's
Yeah.
Because
It's a great idea.
we have kind of a bad image for people coming in
Okay.
to landing at the airport
Yeah,
because it's
Pratt
not.
and I can meet with Brett and go down there, kind of do our,
Okay.
interior decorator
Yeah, order
visualizing and
Order 2 of each one, right?
I can do
If
whatever.
you're okay with
You guys have to
that.
approve
That's a
the
good
budget.
idea.
I can spend it.
It's COVID money, isn't it?
Yeah,
Isn't
I'd
that
say.
what everything is at this point?
I guarantee our street signage is.
on the note of the airport though, we did get some great improvements made to our fuel truck.
Awesome.
And so we're excited about that, but yeah, eventually we'll have to buy a new one, but the repairs that were made were good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a public hearing on the stuff that we already had a public hearing on.
Except for this one's
So
legitimate.
this could be quick.
So there was just, and I think everybody's aware, but the public notice went out, but we missed a piece of the public notice. And so we're just fine where we were, but we need to cross all the Ts and dot all the Is. And so those have now been crossed and dotted. And so I would venture to open the public hearing for all 4 items. And if you wanted to give like a 20-second synopsis of each one.
Okay.
So if somebody's here to speak to one of those, we will be able to understand which one they're
Okay.
addressing.
So discussions item policy.
Well, we have to
I'll
have a
make a motion that we
motion.
go into public hearing to discuss those 4 items listed on the agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Robert and Katie, all in favor?
Aye.
That's everybody. Okay, now we're in public.
So discussions item policy, staff just wanted to have a decision from the council. If you wanted to have formal work sessions before every council meeting, or as the attorney recommended, establish a set policy and code that said you can have discussion items where formal motions won't be made, so that we can get feedback and then bring them back for a formal motion. So that's the intent behind that. Financial officer, mayor designee. Everywhere else, the city manager is, or it's the mayor or his designee, which is generally the city manager. But for some reason, under the financial officer, it wasn't there, and that's also the budget officer, so it just was code cleanup. And a little bit of corrections of wording because the name of the power company and some things were in there that those names no longer exist, so clean up there. Purchasing procedures, basically we removed purchasing procedures out of code. You adopted a purchasing policy, which obviously didn't need to come back before you because it doesn't have the same timeline as a public hearing. And basically the purchasing procedures in code says refer to the administrative purchasing policy, which you guys approved already. And then the transportation master plan. So you approved part of the plan, but then they were going to bring the code changes. I looked into it more. I did some research and I spoke to some of my peers. And because the transportation master plan is technically an arm of the general plan, it has to be approved by ordinance and therefore go through a proper public hearing. And that's why you're seeing the transportation master plan come before you here. So that's the synopsis on those 4 things.
That was excellent. Does anyone from the public want to address council on any one of those 4 issues, or do they need some clarification on anyone to decide if they want to address council on any of those 4 issues? Seeing none, I would accept the motion unless we had anything online. I need to question that. That's always a nice way that people can do that if they choose. So a motion to leave public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we leave public hearing.
Second.
That's Bowers and Nilsson, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
that was good to do that little housekeeping.
Yes, thank you.
So
All right.
Put it in the newspaper.
No, well,
Yeah.
now we have to do, well, once you vote on it now in the business item section, we'll do a little summary. I'm glad you brought that up. We need to notate that. We have to put out in the newspaper, again, a
That's where we
summary.
missed the vote last time.
No, what had happened before is Kim does the public noticing on the state website, and I, being new, thought she was also sending it to the newspaper, but I guess Jeremy used to do that, so neither of us knew that the other one hadn't done it. And so when we caught that, we said, okay, well, let's make sure we public notice it. Let's just redo it again, now that we know the system.
Okay, so then moving into the business items would be the actual, if there is any further discussion on those things, we'll take them one at a time in this case. And then have a motion to adopt each given ordinance. So the discussion items policy, ordinance 2021-1. Is there any question on what that entailed? And if not, then I would accept the motion to adopt.
I'll make a motion that we adopt discussion items policy ordinance 2021-1.
I'll second it.
That's Perkins and Turk, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And the cleaning up of the language on finance officer designee.
I'll make a motion that we approve the financial officer mayor designee ordinance 2021-2, David Johnson.
I'll second it.
It's Turk and Bowers, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sounds like everybody. Any opposed? Okay, item 3, purchasing procedures. Somebody can just run with that one.
Kellen, you got this.
I'll make a motion we accept purchasing procedures ordinance 2021-3.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Second from Turk, all in favor?
Trying to rate this.
Okay, any opposed? And adopting the transportation master plan. Who's over roads? Who's got streets?
I think that's me.
Are you streets? Go for it.
I'll make a motion that we adopt transportation master plan ordinance 2021-4.
I'll second it.
That's Perkins and Turk, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, little house clean. It's not like we didn't do some discussion on that in the past.
Right.
So I reported initially a little bit on the meeting with the Secretary of the Interior, and as this thing evolved, we thought we had no seat in any of this 3 days out. And then literally the evening before, like 39 hours before or something like that, I got a call from Amber Johnson. She said, I've got you in. We can get one person. I said, can I bring a second? And she says, no, it's one person, non-transferable. If you want to change it, it might take some doing, but we could possibly change it. I wouldn't suggest that, because if you try to change it, you might just lose your seat. That was the message. And so at that time, I thought, okay, I'm not going to have much time to say very many things. And so I will write a letter that I will submit the letter along with other concerns we have. And I can do that you can get more in a letter than you can say in the moment. And actually several people who spoke had followed that same pattern. They had written information and they made their verbal comments. So this is my letter. I don't know if anybody's taken time to read it. I wrote it up, and then I asked Dave to kind of wordsmith it from a PR perspective a little bit. I adopted pretty much, he made good recommendations. He's a PR guy for a reason. When he explained why he was recommending the changes, I said, yeah, but I want to be ornery. And he says, but don't be. So that was kind of the gist of that conversation. And so I adopted pretty much the changes that he recommended. And then so this is the letter that I presented. Now, a lot of people have asked us about the letter. And the reason I have it here, just to make sure everybody knew that I did have the letter, and then it was submitted to her in person. But then I've had reporters and other people that are asking, and they want a copy of the letter. And it says mayor, but if we want this to have kind of a broader connotation, which I think people assume that it does, I didn't want to presume to speak for council by letting somebody think that this was the council's letter. Even though it doesn't say that, but that becomes kind of a presumption. So I wanted to present it here, and then if people liked the letter and wanted to support it, then we can go ahead and let people run with the idea that it's the council position and not just my personal position. Or we can leave it that way if you don't like it. But when people are asking, they think they kind of want to know. So
Just looking for consent on support.
yeah, if you like it and say, yeah, we like that letter. Then
So you added to this by talking about the watershed.
Mhm.
yeah, I talked about the watershed a little. Bruce really addressed that quite extensively. That was his only comment. He used his whole 3 minutes talking about
A
watershed.
lot of the people here in town, that's been their huge concern too. So I'm glad that happened.
Well, I visited with her staff and others after, and I said, water is historically is the #1 agenda item on Blanding City Councils.
Right.
Since there have been Blanding City Councils. It's of that great of a concern. And so we need to be aware of what's going on with it.
I like your letter.
Just a question, you put there that you think the majority may support the larger monument. You think the larger support of the Native Americans within the county support the monument? Is that what?
Within the county,
That's what I'm just confused.
it's hard to say.
But
It's hard to say. Given that the local chapter voted against the larger monument, I believe 4 times. I would guess that within the county, it might split 50-50-ish, but I have nothing to base that on.
So this chapter is at the Blue Mountain Dene that you're talking about?
No,
And a chapter,
Yeah.
this isn't a real chapter here.
Right.
yeah, Blue Mountain Dene is just an organization.
Okay.
They're
It's the
members
Aneth
of the
chapter
Aneth
then.
chapter. And it's the only Navajo chapter that is entirely within the state of Utah. All the others split across borders or are not in Utah at all. And I think their voice should possibly carry more weight than any other chapter. They're the ones that are the most local and the most affected.
that's all I have. But I like it though.
Yeah, other than that one comment, because I don't think we know what the majority of the Native Americans support or don't support, other than from the Aneth chapters voting, but.
Well, anyway,
But it's done.
it's out there. It's
It's already
published
out.
as my letter. If people wanted to have the perception that it was a council position, that's what I was
I
looking for.
wouldn't shy away
It's
from
in the
your
council.
because it voices concerns I have.
Okay.
I agree. There's some really good points in there. I liked it. Was there anyone in the meeting who said, was there multiple people who said, we don't want to see the monument increase, don't increase the monument? Are firm with that stance?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
20 people who spoke, I would say 15 of them were not in favor of expanding back to the original size or larger.
Okay, good.
The other one that I was going to address was I don't see the farmers, ranchers, miners, but they had a meeting of their own immediately following ours, and I saw them.
I saw some of those
So
folks.
they had their chance to, I knew that was coming, so I didn't address that. It had already been answered for me. So my feeling from her is that I thought that she is trying to do her job. I don't know that her doing her job will change the overall political situation that
And she
exists.
said that, I mean, you guys were there, but she said that, and she said, in the end, it's President Biden's decision, but if you don't like his decision, then I would encourage you to try and pass legislation that does it how you want. So I thought that was interesting that a member of his own cabinet would say, go for legislation if you don't like the decision. Because usually you don't hear that from a cabinet member. So it was
Well,
interesting, but
Probably a hint for the future too.
yeah.
Dang it. But it's true.
But
Legislation. That's the one that fixed it.
a lot of people were in town, and I think that the community hosted them well, and we were friendly and welcoming, despite whatever differences of opinion there might be across the board. I had quite a good visit with Willie Gray Eyes for about an hour before the meeting. He was in the meeting room, and I saw him going in, so I popped in. We were the only two there, and so we had a little conversation there for a while, and then went out to the press conference to watch that. But anyway, I think the community represented itself well. So, all right.
I'm fine with it if it's represented as council.
Okay. If anybody asks, I will tell them council agrees with my letter. All right, thank you. Okay, property line adjustment.
Mayor and council, we've got the report there, if we can get, Dave, can you call up plat, so we can look at that real
Can I,
quick.
sorry, can I ask a quick question? I apologize, this is important. Did we give them any of our past resolutions,
Oh, wow.
especially the one with planning and Monticello
Yes,
together?
we do.
There
Thank
are
you.
four,
Page
three,
is not
three
on.
prior to our.
It's on
3 or 4 and my letter.
And the one with planning and
66 will
Monticello?
be the plat.
Perfect, thank you.
Should be the flat.
Yeah, that's what you want.
All right, let me,
Yeah, right there.
let me just make this the actual screen size and then let me screen share for our viewing audience.
2016, 2019, 2020, and.
Sorry, it's being a little jittery, so, now let me do this real quick so I can
Yeah.
screen
I
share.
was sitting between
That's
Willie
all
and
I
Ken.
I know it's hard for you
You get
to
along with both of them. Just
Oh, good God.
look at that plat very good when it was in your packet because it's too small, but
Major difference.
if you look at the two gray areas on there, we have this gray area here that's on 500 North. That's what Linda Simmons would be deeding over to the city. And we had street right away that went clear back about 35 or 40 feet behind the curb here. And so in talking with our public works director and that, we wanted to keep 10 feet behind the curb, which is our normal standard in residential areas. And so we would be trading, she would pick up about 0.05 and she would be giving us 0.03. So real close. State law requires that you, if there's additional right of way that you have, that you give it back to the adjoining property owner. And so we're just complying with state law. Is there any questions?
Nothing easy.
So the
Yeah.
part that,
I was trying to figure it out and actually see this.
Basically, it's just making sure, I mean, this is basically a proportional right of way around the whole edge of the
How was this
property.
discovered?
So she submitted a survey plat showing that she wants to subdivide her property. Her house is on tract A and tract F, or tract Y is gonna be another lot, so it's a minor, it'll be a minor subdivision. And they're gonna build another house there. And what we have, if I can give you just a real brief lesson, Landing City Town Site starts at 200 North and goes south to 5th South. So if you get above 200 North in Landing or below 500 South or west of 500 West, then things were done kind of helter-skelter. And so over the last 60 years, the city's been trying to catch up on getting street right-of-ways and everything else. And so when we have development that draws our attention to areas like this, we try to clean this up. And we've had great success over the last 30 plus years, getting property owners to work with us to clean up these areas. And as the mayor well knows, there's been a few times over the last 20 years where we usually get property, but sometimes we have the opportunity to give property. And this is an opportunity where we can clean that up and give a little more property to that adjoining parcel and make it so they can have a buildable lot. So we can get another nice new house instead of a weed area in Blanding. So
Makes sense to
love
me.
that. I'm just wondering, why does she have to deed us that portion on the top? Is that a section that we should have and we don't? Or-
her property went out within 2 feet of the back of the curb. And so we needed to pick up that to have the 10 feet for our public sidewalks,
Okay.
power poles, fire hydrants.
So that gives us the 10
pedestals.
feet there and then we give her back the extra. Oh, gotcha.
And she's getting in excess of what we're receiving, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty close trade, but even if we were giving her more by state law, that's what we need to do. We just wanted to show you, we're picking up one other parcel from the county. There's 2 other property owners there to the east that we're still hoping will come around, but right now they're not. And we've kind of dragged this out now for 3 months or something like that, trying to work with property owners.
6.
And
No, it's time.
It's time that we move on and let Mrs. Simmons do her thing. And we've got what we need here, so.
Well, I'll make a motion, we approve resolution 4-13-2021-2.
I'll second that.
It's Monson and Perkins. Any question on the motion or any further information? Part of what you run into on some of these is the original town site was laid out and it is what it is, and it's really easy and it's simple and all the lines match. Outside of that, depending on where you came from benchmarkers that were laid out with sticks and chains and, those benchmarkers can be way off. And so if the survey came from one or the other, there's a lot of overlapping property. There's property all over external to the town that just simply doesn't exist or that is owned by two people. And so there's a lot of these problems, and this one's pretty simple, relatively speaking, to try to figure out.
Now that we've got to this stage, it was simple, but we had to work with their surveyor quite a bit. So it takes a while to get all that figured out. sorted out.
We'll be working on going west on 3rd South at some point.
Yeah.
Because there's things bubbling up out there.
Did we vote yet?
No.
We did not vote yet. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Make it
opposed?
official.
Okay, fire reimbursement contract.
Okay, so this is the annual contract we have every year with fire, forestry, and state land. Basically, when they dip their bucket in our reservoir,
Yeah.
here's our reimbursement.
Okay,
So
that's still happening.
standard, same contract that you've seen every year.
No, we change, not every year. We change this a lot about,
I get asked about it every year,
about
making sure we're still
about
doing
2 years ago. We made some, it wasn't working real well for a long time, and it's worked well
it.
since
I have
whenever year
someone
that we did that.
here that we're got it going again.
Yeah,
It's
so it's good.
Good.
It's worked well since we made momentous changes, I don't know, 6 years ago or something. It made all the difference, so. All right. So,
So we make a motion to accept that.
yeah, where's the resolution?
I make a
Oh, it's on
motion
the-
that we accept the FFSL fire reimbursement contract with resolution 413, 2021-3.
Second it.
Okay, so that's Kurt and Bowers. Any questions on the motion or the agreement?
It's backdated. Like it goes into effect January 1st, 2021. I suppose that's not an issue, but.
I wouldn't see why it would be. I think it's probably just
They
because
just
they,
pass every time they take money out of the retail.
I'll have to talk to them about that, but I don't know if they just base it on calendar year. So if they do, then we'll want to probably bring it before
Yeah.
that in the future, so.
I'm good with it.
So we good for a vote then? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Good there. All right, new hire and retention offers.
Hey, so this is something that we had the discussion item about. I felt like we got some great feedback from the council. You read your packet, but the long story short is just putting a cap on how much the city manager can offer for new hire retention offers. And we took into consideration if they're above the mid or below the mid. And what you see before you is based on the discussions that we had and the recommendations that staff received. Any questions?
The only thing is I had asked that we add that if there's an employee retention offer, that if you have to do that to retain an employee, that you notify council.
Yes, and the council will be in.
But it's not in this policy.
Let me go into that. Thought I had added it in there, so if it's not, I apologize. What page are we on?
It says it on page 85. During the new hire and retention portion of the discussion, staff identified a lack of policy that limits how much can be offered within the budget. Staff recommended that the city establish a policy of 10% max. Is that what you're talking about?
What she's saying is.
No, just that
I'm
he would
sorry.
bring a notice and say.
City council asked staff to come back during the next
Such and
meeting.
such person in this position had an offer, I'm making a counter offer. and
So right
we are
here,
Notified of that.
what I need to do, and you can just add this in your motion, that if you make the motion, or whoever makes the motion, that I motion to approve, resolution, whatever, and that staff add that city council be informed, that the mayor and city council be informed. And I'll add that in there, and I apologize, I thought I had added it in there, but, so.
That sounds great.
Let's actually write on here. I mean, let's actually create that language.
So where I
we
would
know exactly what
recommend
it's going to say.
is, the city manager can make adjustments of up to 10%, employee above market, and I'm reading the employee below the
Why don't
market.
you bring this resolution up on your screen and type the changes into it? Is that possible? Or is it just?
I'm in a different account, so I won't be able to access it here. But I think it's pretty simple. Total adjustment.
My recommendation was that if you have to give a raise, and I don't necessarily think we need to know this for new hires, I'm fine with the new hire portion of this, but if you need to give a raise outside of the budget process, city council needs to be notified, even if you do it and then you notify us later because you need to retain an employee. So I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I think if you give a raise outside of the budget process, council needs to be notified.
Yes, as long as it's
That's
within,
what-
if it's in the budget,
That's
yeah. So I think all we need to do is in the policy here is that the city manager, so I'm looking at employee retention offers. The city manager can offer up to 10% increase with the budget for employees under the midpoint and up to 6% for employees above the midpoint, and inform the council. I think that's all we need to really add to suffice with what you're saying. And you can tell me if you don't.
Is there a
feel
reason why we
that's-
can't add a section that says if a raise is given outside of the normal budget process, council will be notified?
I mean, we could do a separate section, but I think it actually holds more weight for what you're trying to do if we just add that language into each of these and must inform the council into each of these.
Oh,
Does
in
that
each
make-
of these. Okay,
Exactly,
that's
yeah.
fine too.
I think it'll have more weight than having it separate, because I think separate would cause a little confusion of which one does it apply to? Does it apply to all of them? I think if it's just in here, and the city manager may do this and inform the
Could you-
council.
And I'm fine with making the motion with that change.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not sure how the rest of the council feels, but maybe you could just bring
I'll
it back,
bring
the
it
final
back to
version
council,
one more
yeah.
time.
So if you
Or do
want to
we
make
wanna-
that motion with that addition, then I can bring it back to council and show you where we made that. And I mean, I think I think the intent is understood here, and in the motion, the intent is understood. So if we have to wordsmith that a little bit, we'll do that. If Kendall, our city attorney, tells me differently that we need to bring it back to you, we'll just bring it back to you again and redo the resolution.
As a rule, I like to vote on something that we actually have it.
Okay, if you want to
The
do
words
that,
are
we can-
actually there. And sometimes, I mean, I was less formal, like what the planning commission would say with these changes, but we would pencil the actual change out so that we could actually see it and say, that is the wording that we would use.
Right.
So let's just table it and bring it back to the next.
Yeah, I think we know where we're at. I
Yeah.
agree, but as a
And
point
I'm
of,
so sorry. I
as a
thought I
point of
added it in there,
precision,
so.
I think it would be better
I
for
agree.
language exactly there. Kim Palmer.
Would it be helpful, because Cheryl is looking for something particular in there, the wording and stuff, that maybe you and Cheryl could work together to get that wording
Just done
I
before
think
the
so.
next meeting?
just
Yeah.
before the
Yeah.
next meeting.
You
then
just want
bring
to send it
back.
my way and then
Yeah.
I agree.
we can look at it.
Yeah.
And then next meeting we can pass this.
I really think
resolution.
it's
So do
as
we need to
simple as
table
just
it?
saying, and inform the council after one of these sentences in each.
Or just a
paragraph.
collective, in all cases, the council
city manager
shall
must
be informed.
Yeah,
See,
actually,
that seems so simple.
you know what, actually, at the end, we could just say, if you felt comfortable and not tabling it, we could just say, add a sentence that at the end of each section that says, the city manager must inform the city council. Boom, that's all
Well,
we
you could
need
have
to
a
do.
you could have a header here that just says, council to be informed, and the only sentence under there is in all cases, the city council shall be informed.
Okay,
I would be comfortable voting on that if we actually penciled that in and said, okay, so that it's a new paragraph that says, city council to be informed.
yeah,
In all cases, the city council shall be informed.
And that's
I think that,
exactly what I
That's
just
the
said
language.
too. So I think we agree. So that's.
okay, so you're
It's-
putting it in a separate
And what that
paragraph, that's
basically
fine.
says is that even with it, if you have to increase a new hire, basically you would need to inform council too. And that's the only one that
Yeah.
I was comfortable with. But I
Okay, so
agree
we can
with
put it in
you.
a separate paragraph. I think that's clear.
Yeah, because then
Just
it
checks
applies
and
to all
balances.
three.
What I'll
cases.
probably do then, the reason why I'm hesitant on the separate paragraph is I need to see how this all fits in with the administrative policies within the section that we're gonna add it in. So I don't know if I just need to have that as like a that's what I was thinking in each paragraph, so I don't have to create like a preface paragraph for the section or anything like that. Sorry, I'm thinking through the nuances. in the back
Well,
of my
then let's make sure we have the precise wording and then we'll do.
So say that
Hold on.
wording
It'll be a
in,
no-brainer when we bring
in
it
all
back.
cases,
City council be notified for informed.
the city council shall be informed. So we'll add that sentence in, whether.
Wherever it makes sense.
Okay, perfect. And I think that's easy enough. And let me just say, I think that's good too, because then it also, I think, addresses what your concern is that we're gonna, if later I leave, or even me, I go rogue and I'm giving everybody raises outside of what's been improved in the budget. If you're being informed, you can be like, I don't like that, Dave. Don't do that
It
again.
could always be
Right.
withdrawn.
Right.
Yeah,
too, so-
exactly.
Right.
That's true. I can be superseded. That's.
Well, but that's why the budget process is important, because we should be doing it then. But I
Yeah.
get that there's these times where it
We
comes
need
up.
to make it,
But I
yeah.
think city council, it's important enough city council should be.
So when you make your motion, whoever makes the motion, just say approve resolution, yada, 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 adding the sentence, in all cases, the city council shall be informed.
In the appropriate format.
Format.
Okay.
You're okay with that, Mayor?
In the
Yeah.
appropriate format. what's
Well,
the-
however it needs to be to fit.
Oh, yes, yes.
So that's the language we want, whether it's a sentence on each, whether it's a separate thing. However it flows well in the document.
Okay.
So it's coming back next?
No, I think,
I think now,
depends if someone has a
we,
motion.
I think everybody's
I think
comfortable
what would
with
be
that
nice is if
sentence.
we go ahead and do that, then you fix it, then you send an email to each of us.
Yeah, say this is how it looks,
Yeah,
this is where it went.
Okay. That sounds
So if you're comfortable with that language, then it's a matter of just putting that language in the appropriate
Sounds great.
format.
Yep.
Okay,
So I'll make a motion then,
there you go.
unless there needs to be any more discussion. That we approve resolution 4-13-2021, the staff salary is below market, the new hire offers and retention offers with the additional language. Can I see your language? I can see
Yes,
it.
if you can read my handwriting,
Yeah, I will.
good luck.
With the additional language, in all cases, the city council shall be informed, that will be added as a separate item or to each item based upon the flow of the document.
Signature.
I will not repeat the motion.
It's been seconded.
There's any question on the motion? Anyway, that's Bowers and Turk, all in favor?
Aye.
Hey, excellent.
Oh, I thought it was gonna be a lot longer meeting.
Are we having a closed session?
We are having a close session.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session for personnel.
I'll motion that we go into a closed session for personnel.
That's Monson and Nilsson, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's start that in about 3 to 5 minutes.
Sounds good.
We get another book.
Yeah, it looked like maybe looking like it was gonna be a really long meeting.